Okay, so I was gonna talk about everything that kind of happened as my childhood, and kind of stuff as I remember it, and just take this journey the way I'm taking it, through video and talk. If anybody else that was in foster care or who is in foster care can relate, and I hope this helps out. So, from as far as I can remember, I mean, we were in and out of our parents' house because they were alcoholics and they just couldn't stop partying. And there was multiple times like we got, I think it was like cops called over because there was no parents there for sometimes days at a time, where it was just like my niece or my parents' niece that come watch us, or our cousins would watch us here and there. And I mean, it was a constant thing too, like I think we got taken out 3 or 4 times, placed in with our grandparents before we got permanently put with them. And that was just like, my parents were super toxic together, just drinking all the time. They were physically fighting in front of us. There was actually a time where I remember, yeah, I must have been like 5-ish, 6-ish, like this was right when we were about to be taken. My mom and dad were sitting there fighting, and my dad, started choking my mom, like, and my mom's punching on him and whatnot. And she actually ended up grabbing a knife, or not a knife, a fork, and just stabbed him right in the back shoulder. If I remember it correctly, it was her right hand, so into his left shoulder. And cops got called after that, got another domestic, and I don't know if it was domestic abuse or any charges. It was a little different back in the 90s. You didn't get charged instantly for a lot of shit like you would these days. But either way, I think that was like the third time, and that might have been the last time. But we were taken away from our grandparents, or our parents, because like we were constantly moving. There was never a solid situation. Like, they were constantly fighting. And I've gotten a story from both my parents. Like, my dad tries to say, "Oh, just get over it. You're a grown man. How can that affect you? You're 30-some years old. It doesn't matter what happened." And my mom's kind of tried to talk to me about it a little bit, but given her versions, like, realistically, again, sorry, but I can't really trust what she says. I mean, both my parents were in jail for check fraud, so I mean, they're both not the best of people. So I came from that. And there's more details into that, which I'll try to explore more. It's just kind of the gist and like what I do remember. And it's kind of foggy because I mean, I was so young during this time, so I just have kind of vague memories here and there. So like, it was multiple times that we were getting cops called on us, and I think one of the last times we were living up in the trailer park up north, a little further north. And then my younger brother, he went to the gas station. He snuck out, ended up going to the gas station stealing something, and there was a cop there who caught him and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" So he ended up paying for, I think it was like a candy bar and something else for my brother, and he ended up bringing him back. Found out, like, oh, it was just one of our cousins watching us, who was maybe a teenager, 14 at the time, that was kind of normal back then. But they couldn't get a hold of my parents at all, like, for hours. So they actually ended up, I think that was one of the final processes of, like, okay, these people are irresponsible, they never buy their kids. I mean, me, 2 brothers, and 1 sister, so there's 4 of us who was basically never watched, because they just couldn't stop partying and drinking and all that stuff. It's actually a big reason why I stopped drinking myself. So, like, because I don't want to do that to my kids and my family. It's, I mean, it affected everything. It changed everything for me personally, like, as a child to now being an adult. So it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, it's just really weird because it's so hard to think back. Like right now, I have a pretty good life, so it's hard to think back at my childhood because like it sucked. It really fucking sucked. It was hard. I was barely ever watched, and then we get taken from our parents' house again, multiple times. So then after that, with that final process of my brother getting caught, we get put into our grandparents' house permanently. And well, from what my mom said, is my mom and dad were trying to work it out. We came back to our with our mom, and like a day after we got back to our mom for the last time, our mom and our dad, but for the last time, the next day my dad got arrested, I think, for cashing a bad check or writing a bad check, and he was in jail for, I don't know, weeks to a month, 2 months, I'm not sure, for a little while. And then same cycle happened, and then that may have been when my brother stole. There might have been something different, like I can't remember exactly. Again, I was quite small, but either way, we were taken when I was about 6 years old. Would be a good guesstimate. We probably lived in 6 to 8 different places, and I mean I was only 6 years old at that time, so 6 to 8 places that I even remember. So yeah, and after that, I mean, that's when kind of like all of the abuse actually started to happen. So my grandparents, they were, I mean, once they got full custody, it was kind of, all right, we'll do what we want to do now. So after we were actually permanently taken, we kind of didn't get to keep in contact with our parents very much. So that made it a little harder to try to keep like reporting, because you only get to see your parents so much. We didn't get to really see anybody else. We had friends there and whatnot, but my grandparents were pretty good at keeping that shit hidden. Their best friend was a cop that lived like right across the street. They and they didn't start like bad, with beating us, but that's how it starts. It's like they started with like, we'd say something that was talking back to him, you get slapped in the back of the head or the side of the mouth or something, like whoa, whoa, whoa. And it just progressively got worse from there, like where they were starting to use belts, and then they'd start to use the metal side of the belt, plastic. I don't know if anybody remembers, but back in the 90s, there's these like plastic, it was like Guitar Hero. It was probably like, you could hold it like a regular guitar type stuff, but like a Guitar Hero guitar. And it was real heavy because back in the day, they built them like sturdy. And our grandpa would use that to whoop our ass with, especially if we were like really talking shit to him. I won't lie, like I was a rough kid, and took us from our parents' house, and so we already had a mouth on us because our parents didn't care. They were alcoholics, and they talked how they wanted. We'd say fuck you, this, that, blah, like we'd always have middle fingers up apparently. And so we weren't the best kids, but we had a lot of stuff going on. We weren't with our parents, we were taken in and out, like we're not getting the best examples. And then like is finally, we get taken out and placed with our grandparents, and yeah, we're technically with family, but that's still foster care, and they were horrible to us then. They were terrible people to us then. So yeah, it was pretty rough in the beginning years, and then it got worse. It was rough because it's like we got taken away, we got put back, we got taken away, we got put back, So it's like we didn't know. Didn't know who to trust, or we couldn't even trust our parents because, well, eventually we're gonna be taken out. So, a lot of those, like I have a lot of insecurity or security issues where it's like I was never in one place for that long. So like, just constantly moving. I mean, I was comfortable that way, even actually most of my life it kind of progressed that way. But like just not being able to trust anybody from like a young age. I can definitely say that's made a huge impact as an adult with relationships, and especially the way my relationships work, you know, is throughout my whole life. I mean, we were moving with our parents constantly back and forth with our grandparents, and then the longest term where I stayed in one stable place as a kid was with our grandparents for the 5 years. But they were abusive and progressively got worse until the 5th year, where they finally beat us so bad. Like they beat me so bad they threw me down the stairs, choking me, pulling hair and everything. That the next day going into school, the cops came in because my sister finally made a call, and I'll get more into that. Like, I'm gonna make one video specifically about that, but they came. Then yeah, we got pulled out from our grandparents because they saw a bunch of bruises on me, and they even checked my brothers too. But I specifically remember, yeah, they pulled us because they saw me pull my shirt up and they saw bruises. Because my grandparents weren't stupid, you know. They beat us, but they beat us neck down, you know, like arms and all the chest area that you could cover. So back, ass, sides, you know. Like there's times the motherfucker broke a rake over my back, a broom over my brother's back. I mean, the dude was a real piece of shit, my grandpa. And my grandma, though, she was a piece of shit too. Well, everybody know that. It was both my grandparents. They were fucking horrible to all of us, my two brothers. And my sister, she ain't never get touched. But so yeah, like, you know, like that childhood trauma, I mean, completely shaped relationships, or non-existent relationships, I should say, because I got so used to moving that even if I had a good friend, I kind of still would drop them, you know, or it was just easy to move on, like any tumultuous stuff, or it was just a lot of, you know, my own insecurities that I didn't really start realizing until I, you know, got a little older and again stopped drinking and kind of start looking into be like, okay, you know, why certain things trigger me? Why is there a certain word that bothers me? Or, you know, and like I'm starting to learn there's these things that happen from when I was a childhood that still affect me, that a lot of people like myself just kind of push to the side, and it is what it is. It was a life I had to live. But now that I'm 35 years old, I got a 4, almost 5-year-old, a almost 2, almost 3-year-old, and you know, I'm seeing how fun they are and just like the spark of joy of life in them. And I just don't understand how any parent could beat the fuck out of a kid, abandon their kid, let them be taken by social services. I understand that people have their problems with addiction and whatnot, but the fact that there's people in this world that choose an addiction over their kid was, and still is, mind-blowing to me. I've had my problems with alcohol. I've had very real alcoholic issues, hence why I quit. There's times where if I start drinking, I just didn't want to stop, and it would go in a cycle. You know, I'd be good for a little bit, in a couple months I'd fucking, all right, I want to drink for weeks, you know, not just a couple days, weeks on end. And instead of finally falling back into that personal trap I created for myself, I stopped the drinking. It was affecting me, it was affecting my family, and it's made a huge difference. Personally, I've been able to, you know, like, because the cycle still comes up of where I start, you know, feeling it, because my family's still, I talk to my mom, kinda, but my dad, quote unquote, disowned me when I was, 28, so about 7-8 years ago. I don't really talk to my brothers. One brother's in jail, prison actually, fucking domestic. One brother, I don't know, he's just stuck with a girlfriend. And then my sister is just, she's got her own problems too that she's never dealt with, but she's got 6 kids now with 4 different guys. And she takes care of 1 baby. She doesn't take care of the 3 boys. The 2 girls are old enough. One of the girls has fucking cancer, and I've been the only one that's there for her, other than my mom, who's actually been supporting her the whole time. Like, I'll give her credit for that. But yeah, my niece had brain cancer. Can't remember the exact definition, but she had brain cancer, and she at 15 she got diagnosed. And my sister's trauma, even though she wasn't beat, really affected her raising her kids, because like my sister, alcoholic, she's barely there. My niece actually with the brain cancer, like, was close to dying because like they just couldn't get over their fucking alcohol and take care of my niece. And like, that's all a part of the trauma that we grew up in, you know. And like, as mad as I am at her for that type of stuff, I understand why it's hard to get over that trauma when you don't face it and you just hide in the alcohol. So yeah, I don't know, it's just, I know it's a little jumpy, but I just want to kind of get that out there, and just for me personally, and if this helps anybody, that's great, you know, that'd be awesome. I hope this helps somebody, because this is more to help me and anybody else that was in a foster care, or anybody else that's been in a tough situation, not even necessarily foster care, but one parent, or you know, maybe you don't have your parents. And yeah, I understand what that feeling is, and I understand the questionings and everything where that comes with that. And sometimes you're better off just moving, just keep on moving, instead of being stuck in that cycle of wonder, you know. Because I've been stuck in that cycle of wonder, and it got me stuck, or I let myself get stuck, and then I used the crutch of alcohol, thinking, you know, whatever, it'll go away, and it never went away. It never does. I don't think trauma really does until you deal with it. But you know, this is something they don't teach us. They don't talk to us in school. They don't tell us how to fucking deal with your emotions and how to deal with the real world stuff when they're screwing us with inflation, and they're screwing us with every cost of living. You know, how can inflation rise 9%, but you get a cost of living rise of 3%? So there's a lot of fucking problems with this country, and so it's easy to mask what happened to anybody or any trauma as a kid, because there's just so much being pushed onto us constantly, you know. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't think 40 hours a week should be a normal human being thing. 32, I think, should be it. Personally, I think that should be the max. Anybody works. We're human. We live once. We should live our fucking lives. We shouldn't slave away to some system that does not reward us in any way possible, especially for people that came from where I came from. You know, statistically, where I came from, I'm always gonna be poor. So I'm not trying to I'm not poor, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a very stingy person. I won't go out for months. I won't eat out food. I'll sit inside and play video games. That's how I saved up money. That's how I was able to buy a house, you know. Is my wife and I think, saved for a full year. Just didn't go out, you know. A full year we were able to buy a house, you know. So it's I get it that there's a way to do it, or a way to do it that they say is their way, but their way is screwing over most of us normal Americans. And especially if you came from, you know, a dysfunctional family, and you don't come from a place that will educate you on finances, or educate you with what credit is, or what interest is. And you know, it's like everything that builds up for a normal life and normal people get education on when they're kids, because you know, they have good parents who want them to succeed in life. Well, I didn't get none of that. I didn't get a single thing like that. I had to learn it by myself, and that put me in debt. Going to school, like, I mean, I went to college, and don't get me wrong, like, it was good, and I enjoyed what I went to school for, but I got an aquatic biology degree, and I mean, I work at a good place, at a big university, you know, I make pretty decent money. I got a good package for, what do you call that? Medical and whatnot, but there is a term I can't think of right now, but so yeah, it's just like, it's possible to live a successful life. It all depends on your definition of success, you know, because if you came from kind of where I came from, like I was saying earlier, you know, we were moving around house to house and moving with our grandparents, a lot of physical abuse, and then I ended up moving to foster care, and I moved eventually to like 7 different houses. After that, like, social workers were finally over it and couldn't do that. And statistically, people that have lived in 5 or more houses are like 90% more likely to, or 90% of them are likely to go to jail or prison. I beat that statistic. I ended up going to college. I paid my own way through college, and I'm still paying off those loans, but you know, it's like, it was more so to prove a point, you know, like, hey, yeah, I was in foster care. They called me a piece of shit. They said I wasn't gonna make it anywhere. It's like, fuck that. I actually I made it into the military. I got kicked out. I'll make a different story of why I got kicked out. But again, it leads into another thing. I had a lot of problems dealing with authority because of how I grew up. Like, police didn't really do anything for me. They actually kind of protected my grandparents, so I ended up like having a deep-rooted hatred for the system, the police, social workers, therapists. I had a therapist betray me one time and told them. I'll get into that in a different video as well. But this is just to kind of get stuff out right now, and I know it might be jumbled, but this is for me. So, and I really do hope it helps somebody, and if it doesn't, well, that's okay. So that's kind of a basic gist of, like, with our parents and how all that worked out, and which that led to, you know, grandparents, foster care, and then just my own personal issues, like, throughout the rest of my life, that I never really attributed it to being raised in a traumatic situation. But you know, like, the older I get, the more I think, the more I see my kids, it's pretty apparent that that shit doesn't just go away, you know. You gotta deal with it, and I'm trying to deal with it, and I hope other people can deal with it with me, and maybe open up about their situation, like, because I'm up there for pretty rare stories. I would say my brothers and I had a pretty rough one to start, so I hope anybody that feels comfortable enough can open up as well. Or if not, at least this hopefully helps you and makes you realize, like, dude, you can have a great life even after some traumatic stuff happening to you. You know, you have to just keep putting one foot forward, keep stepping, and there's times that are going to be horrible. Not going to want to do it. But guess what? After about 100 steps, you're going to look back like, yeah, damn, it wasn't that bad. You know? This life's a beautiful thing. We really, really all need to take a step back. Stop. Smell the flowers. And just realize, like, what a lucky position all of us are in to be just alive right now and enjoying this life, this amazing, beautiful, crazy life that we have going on. How lucky are we to be living this? Well, you guys have a good night.